Our city, nation, and world have all gone through a very difficult time for the last 18 months. From a worldwide pandemic, a national outcry for better race relations, and a local 500-year storm event, we've had a lot to deal with. My guests today have been meeting the challenges head-on. Westland Facilities Director Vic Barra is here to talk about how the city mobilized to quickly help people recover from the recent storm event that affected residents throughout Southeast Michigan. Then Police Chief Jeff Jedrusik will be here to talk about what his department has been doing to help improve trust, transparency, and accountability throughout his department. We finished the show with Fire Chief James Morse going over what the city's response was to COVID-19 and where we go from here. We're tackling local, national, and global issues that affect each one of us here in the City of Westland, and you're watching In the W. Hello and welcome back to In the W. I'm Mayor Bill Wild and we're coming to you from Studio W in the WLND studios, and joining us for our first segment is the City of Westland's Facilities Director, Vic Barra. Welcome to In the W, Vic.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to be here.
Well, Vic, on today's show we're talking about how local government, it feels like, maybe at least here at the City of Westland, we're always kind of dealing with crisis. You know, maybe they're national crisis, or a little bit later we'll be talking with Chief Morse about a worldwide crisis. But with you, Vic, you wear a lot of different hats for us. Lately, you've had to spend a lot of time helping us and helping residents recover from some serious flooding that affected not only Westland, but all of the Detroit metro area. And it seems like every couple of days it starts raining again, so everybody's kind of keeping our fingers crossed that we don't have those issues. But Vic, why don't we just real quick talk about that? I know that the rain actually started on a Friday night, and you were one of the first people that got the call.
Yeah, it was a difficult time. Everybody'd gone home for the day. The calls are starting to come into the police department. Residents are being affected pretty early. The rain was coming hard and heavy, so it didn't take long to start to impact people. We knew that we had a problem along Newburgh Road underneath the railroad crossing. That wasn't getting better. There was already some vehicles stuck in the water, and people were escaping from their vehicles. So we knew we had some problems right up front.
Well, I know you mobilized, and I joined you guys out there on Saturday morning. The deputy mayor and I, we were actually out on Newburgh trying to take a look at that, because that was probably our biggest fear at that time. But there were a lot of people that had water in their basement, and I know that you helped us with those efforts to get stuff out to the curb, and then to help us get it away from the curb. We talked about the event started on a Friday, went into Saturday, but we were coming right out of that weekend with the biggest holidays of the year, 4th of July in Westland. So what was it like on the streets?
Well, first thing you realized was the enormity of the problem, because some streets, literally every house along the street, had debris already at the curb. So our residents reacted quickly. They did the right thing. They knew what they needed to do to mitigate the damages. But when you look at that much debris within a span of 24, 48 hours, we knew we were going to have a big problem on our hands start kicking off the week. When everybody returned, we mobilized as many of our DPS forces as that we could get a hold of on the weekend, but then again, other people had already left for out-of-town vacations and weekend events, so it was difficult to staff up. The other big challenge that we knew we were going to have is it was regional. Everybody was vying for the same resources, for trash haulers, roll-off dumpsters, mobile equipment to move the debris. Every city was facing the same challenge, and we were no different.
So Vic, one of the things I want to dive into on today's show is that You're our facilities director, and here you are, on the streets leading some of our recovery efforts from the flood. And we're going to talk a little bit later with Chief Morris, who's our emergency manager, and the role that he played in that event. But I think it shows that in Westland, you have to be able to wear a lot of different hats. And you did those efforts, throughout the weekend, throughout the holiday. We came right out of that, and we had an incident here at City Hall where we had a broken pipe that created some internal flooding here, and you had to deal with that. And you've got a lot of facilities out there too. So how do you kind of manage that? You're a small department, but you're being called on for the day-to-day duties, but you're also serving in this role that helps us out in these crises too. So what do you think? How do you do that? And maybe give the folks at home a little bit about some of your background that maybe trained you for that.
Well, let me get a drink, Mayor.
See, Vic doesn't like talking about himself.
No. Crisis management, I think, is one of my strong skill sets, Mayor. Being a maintenance person through the UAW and Ford Motor Company for 30 years, maintenance guys have it pretty good overall. It's kind of a relaxing job until that production line goes down, and then it becomes a crisis management situation, and you're expected to get up and go and make it better quickly. So those are skill sets that you develop. When buildings go down, everybody inside of a building's affected. You need to be able to react quickly, calmly, and effectively to get the job done. So I think you get molded into that mindset. I like to say that I thrive in crisis sometimes, where not having enough to do probably gets me into more trouble than I need.
Well, I think the one thing we're going to see as a pattern throughout today's show is that we've got a great team here in the City of Westland, and everybody kind of pitches in, and regardless of what the crisis is, they have a role in the crisis, but they also are responsible for keeping the day-to-day operations going. And Vic, you've done a great job of that.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
All right. Well, Vic, we're going to let you get back at it. Vic's also helping us with a big open house we have at Marshall, and that'll be a big facility, 140,000 square foot, to add to your portfolio if we move forward on that. So we're going to keep you busy, Vic.
That sounds like it, Mayor. I'm ready.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break on In the W. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Coming up next on In the W, we have Police Chief Jeff Jedrusik joining Mayor Wild.
Summer is here and it's time to get outdoors and dance. The City of Westland DDA is proud to announce two very special concert evenings. Smooth Summer Nights, Thursday, August 19th and 26th, Westland Central City Park. Bring your lawn chairs and enjoy Alexander Zonjic and Friends, featuring my special guest James Lloyd from Pieces of a Dream, 14-year-old keyboard sensation Justin Lee Schultz, and sax superstar Eric Darius. 6:30 to 8:30, Smooth Summer Nights. Free. For details, call Phyllis, 419-280-1073, 280-1073.
Welcome back to In the W. So on today's show, we're taking a look at how local government's role plays in both regional crisis, national crises, and a little bit later we're going to talk about a worldwide crisis. We just heard from Vic Barra, our facilities director, talking about how the City of Westland reacted to a local crisis, and now we're joined by our Police Chief Jeff Jedrusik. And Chief, you've had to kind of manage the department through what we'll call a national crisis. After the death of George Floyd in 2020, there's been calls for law enforcement change nationally. There was civil unrest in a lot of communities. We saw, protesting right here in the City of Westland. So, Chief, I know that in the police department, you work on. Crisis is kind of your middle name. We'll say that. But at the end of the day. You've done a great job, and can you talk a little bit about the crisis that the police department has had to that you as a police chief have had to manage through over the last 18 months or so?
Well, Like you said, is the police department's interesting because every day is a new adventure. We continue to provide provide the service that the residents want on a day-to-day basis. We try to deal with your quality of life issues, but then when something as dramatic as the death of George Floyd took place, it really made us change the way that law enforcement is done, not only just in Westland, but throughout the country. So police departments throughout our country have had to kind of police differently, and we've done some different things to try to make sure that we're providing the service with confidence, transparency, and accountability to our community.
Well, Chief, the police department's pretty much involved in every crisis. When we were talking with Vic about some flooding that started a couple weeks ago, that turned into a big regional issue. Actually, the first calls from residents went to the police department through your 911 dispatch. So, do you have any feedback on kind of how that all got started? And then I want to circle back around to the civil unrest.
Yeah, what it comes down to is the Westland Police Department is usually always going to be the hub for a resident or a community concern, especially after hours. I mean, during the day, your office is always available. People call the mayor's office all day long on business hours, but if something happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, the calls are going to be routed to the police department. So we want to make sure that our officers and our dispatch center and our police service aides are trained on the ability to make sure that we're also providing and directing those resources that are needed for other things, such as the flooding and things like that have taken place.
Well, we appreciate, a lot of times it seems like that stuff happens at night or it happens on the weekends, so we appreciate the department's assistance in those issues. Circling back to, the call nationally for a change in the police department, I have to tell you is that I thought you were very proactive on it. I mean, you went right to work on it. You had to manage your department through, at the same time we were dealing with COVID at the same time, but you made a lot of progress in a short period of time. You were actually recognized by the NAACP for some of your efforts. So why don't we just kind of talk about, in the face of that national crisis, what our department's done or your department's done, because a lot of departments still haven't done a lot in that manner. So can you talk about some of the things that you've done and if you think that they've made a difference?
Sure. I could talk about this for hours. I think the big thing is that in law enforcement throughout our country, it's always been kind of a paramilitary organization. And now we're seeing that the communities want to see their police more interactive with the community, more of a community policing philosophy. That's how we're going to build trust, transparency. And it's different. It's a lot different than law enforcement was 20 years ago. So, we take a look at, what do we need to do? Well, we need to build trust, transparency, and accountability for our officers. And we started that with all the way back when we obtained national accreditation through CALEA. There was only a handful of departments in the state of Michigan that had the accreditation, and less than 5% in the entire country holds such an accreditation. But what that does is it also kind of feeds into what a lot of people have been asking for is oversight. What CALEA is it's basically an oversight commission for law enforcement. It's got members of the International Association of Chiefs of Police that oversight our department, NOBLE, which is the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement Executives, and also PERF, which is the Police Executive Research Forum. These organizations are all part of CALEA that do provide oversight for our department, everything from our use of force to our policies to make sure that we're adhering to those types of standards. After accreditation, we went down the paths of body camera programs. We were one of the first departments in the state of Michigan to put body cameras on every single officer and every single police car that we had in our department. And today that's just been proven effective. Some of the other things that we worked on were, you and I put together with the communities of Western Wayne, the listening tour. What we did is we took a step back and we said, okay, let's hear what our community is asking for. This was right around the times of the protests with Mr. Floyd's death. And what we heard a lot of is that the residents felt like they wanted to have more transparency and an opportunity to speak to mayors, directors, police chiefs about their concerns. And so we set up that forum that we got a lot of progress out of that. So we've been making those types of efforts.
I think it's made a difference, and I think that communication goes a long way with the transparency that you've instilled in the department. I think that's definitely helps community relations. As we talk about these crises, this was a crisis. It wasn't a Westland crisis. This was a national crisis, but it touched about every community, and the fact that you jumped right into this, I think, shows a lot about your leadership. Before we move on to our next guest, let's just talk about, as you're dealing with these crises. I mean, a lot of times with the police department, you're maybe thinking about, a certain run or a certain call, but when these big crises come in, how do you manage that? And, maybe is there something that's in your training or background that kind of kicks in when we have these type of emergencies, and how do you lean on your staff as well?
Well, I guess the best thing that we do as a police department, and it's something I'm actually pretty proud of, is we put a lot of focus on emergency preparedness. We have an emergency preparedness team. We have a lieutenant that oversees the team, and we spend a lot of time training for the unexpected. Day to day, the average citizen will see the police officers driving around and enforcing traffic, and that's a good day. Those are the days when we're out there trying to make police presence and be seen. But what we are always training for and preparing for is the bad day. And we've seen them throughout our country, whether it's an active shooter that we've seen them in schools, we've seen them in malls, and we've seen them in places like that. And we as a police department have to prepare and train for those bad incidents. It's difficult to train and plan for a 2 o'clock in the morning flood that has all of our residents,
It's true.
Lights turned upside down. So we as a police department prepare, along with our fire department, for responding to make sure that the quality of service is always going to be there for our residents, whether it's a minor issue or an extreme issue.
All right. Well, Chief, a lot of people may not know that those NIXL alerts that you receive to your phone actually originate in the police department. I was a little surprised to realize that we only had about 2,000 of our residents that were registered for that. Would you suggest that more residents sign up for those, and do you think they're helpful for you as well?
I think it's the best communication platform that we have out there. A lot of people rely on Facebook, they rely on Twitter and things like that, but if NIXL's a simple one. Sign up for it, get the alerts on your phone, and that is the first thing that a police department is going to do. We push our information out on NIXL, the things that are immediately need to get sent out to our community. Afterwards, we try to follow up with the Facebooks and the Twitters and things like that to try to provide more detailed information. But if there's something that we need our residents to know right now, we push it out through NIXL, and it's a great platform. I really encourage people to use it.
And the great thing is it's free.
And it's free, yes.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, and we appreciate the department's response to, the national crisis, but also for your help on these local crises as well.
Well, that's what we're here for, Mayor. Appreciate it.
All right, Chief. All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about a worldwide crisis that had an effect right here in the city of Westland as well. So we'll be right back.
Stay tuned for Fire Chief James Morris up next on In the W.
65% of bicyclist deaths happen in the dark. Use a bike light when riding and watch for bikes when driving at night. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
Welcome back to In the W. So we've been talking a lot about crisis management and how local government responds to crises at both the local, the national, and the worldwide level. And joining us now is the City of Westland's Fire Chief and our Emergency Preparedness Coordinator, Chief Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to be here.
Well, Chief, welcome back to In the W. And Chief, you probably feel like since you've been promoted to Chief, it's been crisis management nonstop. You stepped right in as our emergency preparedness coordinator for COVID-19, the coronavirus. It wasn't a local issue. It was what we found out was a worldwide issue, but at the local level, it certainly affected the City of Westland, and you've been at the front lines of it, and you've done a great job with it. So can you talk a little bit about, how as a fire chief, how you kind of stepped into that role and how you've been managing that?
Absolutely. It definitely had to hit the ground running, and a trial by fire, but luckily for me, I'm a fireman, so it came a little bit naturally. But hectic to say the least. We started out doing the vaccine clinics, and as the virus continued to spread, more and more people were eager to get in these lines, so we had thousands of people set up into these lines and got Westland's bravest doing the vaccinations themselves, partnering with the Michigan National Guard and local communities, Wayne County, and we even brought it back locally, doing it at the Mike Modano Ice Arena. So currently we have shut down that operation, and we're looking forward to setting up future clinics as the need arises.
So you feel like we've made a difference? I mean, I know in the beginning, as we set up those clinics, we had lines stretched as far as the eye can see, and then at the end it was more of a trickle. But I really appreciate your leadership. The fire department stepped up. I mean, we didn't really wait for the county or the state. I mean, you guys jumped in, and I mean, you even sent firefighters into homes to deliver vaccinations for homebound seniors and those with disabilities. So, you know, now that we're well into this, do you personally feel like you made a difference here in Westland?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that the administration got behind was reaching out to some of the homeless population and our homebound residents. So right out of the gate, we started getting a list of homebound people, even though we didn't have access to the vaccine to go right to their doors. But since then, we've caught up. We've done over 200 in-home vaccinations and countless homeless vaccinations as well. So I think that we've done a great job trying to keep pace, and we're ready to expand operations if it ever does flare up again, or third doses, booster doses become a thing.
So you mentioned you're going to have a clinic coming up at Blues Brews and Barbecue. It's another opportunity, if you have not been vaccinated yet, that you can get vaccinated.
Absolutely. So our partnership continues with Kroger Pharmacy. Biju Patel has been really behind our whole project from the beginning, and we're going to set up a tent by the fire department CPR tent, and there's no appointment necessary. Come and get your COVID-19 vaccine.
So since that's a one-day event, will there be a follow-up that they'll be able to get their second shot if it's needed?
Absolutely. So the second shots will be through Kroger Pharmacy as well.
Gotcha.
They typically have 15 to 20 openings on a daily basis, and they'll be provided the phone number to call and make an appointment if they want. And a lot of times Kroger will accept the walk-ins if they have the availability.
Chief, there's a lot of talk out there about the Delta variant, and while maybe it hasn't been as prevalent in Michigan as it has been in some other states, is that something that you're keeping an eye on as well?
For sure, the Delta variant, and they're even talking about a Lambda variant now, so these things are constantly mutating. The more they stay in the population, the more they mutate. So really that's targeting those who are unvaccinated. And again, we just want to encourage people to get vaccinated, because the ones that are vaccinated that end up getting the COVID-19, they don't have as severe symptoms and recover much faster. So we're really pushing that, hey, you need to get vaccinated to avoid this Delta variant that is being problematic.
So Chief, well, you've done a great job managing the COVID vaccinations for us and keeping the firefighters actively involved with that. At the same time, with the recent flooding that we've had, you've also had to take a very forward leadership role working with FEMA as our representative, working with FEMA to help make sure that Westland residents have access to whatever federal funding relief funds that are going to come in. Can you talk a little bit about, we're switching hats from one crisis to another, but that's kind of what today's show is about, is talking about how here in the city of Westland we have to manage through several crises, and sometimes they converge. So can you talk a little bit about your role in the recent flooding?
For sure. I'm definitely representing the city of Westland on all these emergency manager meetings, keeping in touch with local officials, and even on the larger scale of Michigan State Police and FEMA, as this has come to be involved directly with FEMA itself. So what we really want to reiterate is that we had a meeting with FEMA representatives and Michigan State Police, and they got boots on the ground, went out with our firefighters as well, did some initial damage inspections, damage assessments, and now it's been elevated obviously to the declaration. So monies have been triggered, and FEMA is still on the ground here in Michigan. There's over 200 FEMA staff on the ground right now, and they're going door to door as well. And there's no charge for these inspections. They're just trying to make sure that the homes, number one, are safe, that they're sanitary, and they're functional.
So Chief, can you walk our residents through, if you've been affected, How should they apply? And I know there's a little bit of confusion because originally there was an assessment form, but the form now that we're asking folks to fill out is actually separate. That's different, right?
Correct. So the FEMA form is completely independent of any forms that they had submitted in the past. Those forms were used to really get to the county, and then the county submitted those to the federal government, and FEMA did their evaluation based on a lot of that information. So that was definitely important, and it was valuable to get the process rolling. But now you need to do a claim through FEMA itself. So one of the ways you can do that is you can go online, and you can do it through the disasterassistance.gov, and they also have a phone number, 1-800-621-3362.
All right, I believe that you can access, if you want more information on that, you can find that on the City of Westland's website. Chief, we're starting to hear a little bit about some fraud out there. Is it something that you're concerned about? That it seems like whenever there's a crisis, there's always that element that comes out and tries to take advantage of people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's something we're keeping an eye on, and it's brought up at these meetings. Just had another meeting a couple days ago. I did talk it over with Police Chief Jedrusik, and we're concerned. We don't want people getting taken advantage of. And now that FEMA has already been on the ground once, residents may have seen them. So for them to come back again or make a presence in the city again, it could be something of concern. So they really do have great information out there. FEMA has a disaster fraud hotline that I wanted to pass along, and that number is 866-720-5721. And if you don't get the resolution you want through something like that, you can always reach out to our local police department and make sure that nothing is fraudulent, and protect yourself.
Chief, at our recent community gathering, we did learn from some residents that applied online for FEMA, and they were denied. In a conversation that we had with our Congresswoman, she had mentioned that if that happens, that she encourages people to appeal. Can you talk a little bit about how that would work?
For sure. So after the inspection, it takes 1 to 2 days before you get your results, according to FEMA. Maybe that's going to drag and be a little bit longer than that, but that's their initial numbers. If you do get denied, they don't want you to lose all hope. She was encouraging them to go out and do that extra step, do that appeal. You need to do that appeal within 60 days of your actual results from your initial inspection. And they're looking forward to doing some actual locations where you can go and be in person and do this registration and do your appeal, but currently none of that is available.
All right, well, we appreciate that, Chief. And, before we wrap up, so obviously you've had a very big hand in 2 major crises, but at the same time, you also have a large department, and you have one of the, the most respected fire agencies in Michigan. So how do you manage, your role in those 2 crises, but also keep the Westland Fire Department operating at a very high level?
It's a lot to handle. I lean on the administrative staff. I lean on the guys, the firefighters themselves, the administration here at the City of Westland, and I acknowledge a lot of the leadership that has come before me in the fire department itself. So falling back on some of those ideas, building upon those moving forward. Guys do regular training. We're always keeping up on that, whether it's paramedic training, firefighter training, looking for always being prepared for that high risk, low frequency event. So we want to make sure that we're preparing our guys and ready for the citizens whenever we need to respond.
Well, you guys certainly do a lot of training, and when we talk about emergency preparedness, that comes in a lot of different ways. And I know your department's very active in helping other communities for responses and emergencies, but also for hazmat responses, and the list goes on. And what unfortunately it appears like you guys are also going to be involved in these weather events moving forward too. So I know you got a lot on your plate, but I know you can handle it. A lot of people don't know is that when Chief Morris was sworn in, he went right to work on COVID and hasn't stopped, and now he's helping us on FEMA. We actually haven't officially hung your badge on you yet, so we're looking forward hopefully in August to recognize you officially and hang the badge on you the proper way, so that your family can come in. It's important, and plus you've hired a lot of officers or firefighters that we want to recognize them as well. So we look forward to when your schedule slows down a little bit that we can recognize you personally, because you deserve it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, Chief. Well, you've heard from today three of our best here in the City of Westland. Vic Barra, Chief Jedrusik, and Chief Morris. The one thing that you probably recognize, this is something that I appreciate. These guys are calm. Even in the face of crisis, we sit around a lot of times in my office having crisis management meetings and stuff, and I tell these guys all the time is that I appreciate how calm you are, how dedicated you are, strategic, and we're very fortunate in Westland to have a good team, because it takes a good team to handle crises, but also to deliver services to our residents. So hopefully you enjoyed today's In the W. We look forward to seeing you on our next show as we say goodbye from Studio W. Have a great day.